YouTube, how the duck you doing? Duck Films here. Today I'm going to be showing you how to improve your aim on Marvel Rivals. And for the video's sakes, I'm going to be on Black Widow because if you control your aim with her, you can pretty much control your aim with every single character in this game. At least that's what I have found. Now I will say in a game like Marvel Rivals, aiming is a crucial aspect, but it's not everything. Things such as positioning, knowing timings of when to ulti, and much more. And if you find this video helpful in any way, shape, or form, do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. Without further ado, let's get started. I first want to cover Marvel Rivals third-person mechanics. Hopefully by now some of you have realized that aiming with Marvel Rivals third-person mode can feel a little wonky at some times. And trust me, you're not the only person who says it feels a little bit off. This is because of the third-person camera that's in Marvel Rivals. That camera being on your right shoulder. For example's sake, say I'm positioned right here, and I'm positioning my camera to be looking at the left side of Luna's Snow. As I use my dash or tactical ability, you can see I completely missed the mark. What seems like an ability that should be connecting to the target doesn't actually happen. But the second I move my camera or view model towards the right side and perform the same attack, you can see that this ability actually connects to the target. Now, if you're playing a character that's heavily reliant on these tactical abilities, Magic or Iron Fist for example, it can be pretty detrimental or pretty frustrating. Even if you aim directly in the center of the player model, you can see it kind of still throws you off to the left hand side. Now, it doesn't only affect characters with the tactical ability, it also pretty much affects every single character in the entire game. Going back to the root cause of this, because it's a third-person shooter that's over the right-hand shoulder. And as you can see when I'm playing Hawkeye and I aim my crosshair to the left of her head, the shots do not connect at all. Even though the arrow or the shot is very close, it doesn't connect. But the second I move my crosshair to the right of her and it's not even on her head, it can still connect. Now, if you're playing a live match, you might be thinking, well, how do I deal with this or how do I adapt to it? And probably in the simplest terms, you always want to position your enemies to the right of you. You're always going to be wanting to move your crosshair across the screen to the right, always trying to keep enemies kind of over your right shoulder. This in turn allows you to avoid the problem of you missing your attacks or missing your abilities or anything like that. Now let's spend a little time talking about hitboxes. The hitboxes in this game can be a little wonky at sometimes as well. What seems like a perfect headshot or a critical shot might not actually be the case. You would think in reference to other games that the neck level would also count as a critical shot, but in Marvel Rivals it actually doesn't count depending on the character. In the case of Marvel Rivals, a headshot is actually a headshot. Now you might be questioning why I said this, that a headshot is a headshot, but you see in other hero shooters, I'm not going to name any specific names, but sometimes you can get away with aiming at the neck level and you getting a headshot. But that's not the case with Marvel Rivals. You actually have to be aiming for the head to get a headshot. Now a lot of you people might be thinking I'm dumb and saying like that's the most obvious thing in the world, but if players are coming from other games, neck level is considered a headshot. So that's why I just wanted to talk about this. When it comes to finding your best sensitivity settings, it's mainly a preference thing, but I can give you a few tips to try to help you find that sweet spot of sensitivity. Now these are some of the more obvious tips, and this is all on mouse and keyboard. For example, if you have a larger desk and mousepad to move your mouse around, you have a lot more options to do a full 360. And if you have a limited range, that would probably mean that you're going to need to have a high sensitivity. Now you might be thinking, why did I mention 360? Now while you're in game, try to do a full 360 turn. Generally speaking, it should take you about 1 to 2 swipes to get a full 360. If the 360 didn't find comfortable to do, then you might need to tweak your settings. I've done this practically for every single game I've ever played, and it's always worked very good for me. Although people will have all their opinions about this technique, and of course the outcome may vary from person to person, but generally this is what I find most helpful and useful to me. Now when it comes to finding your sensitivity with the controllers, I'm not super knowledgeable with finding, the right sensitivity for it, as the last time I probably picked up some type of controller was all the way back in like 5th grade, so I can't really give you too much advice on that. But if you're watching this video and use a controller, let me know your tips or techniques of finding the right sensitivity for you in the comments down below. I'll make sure to pin that comment for every controller user to see. Now with most first-person or third-person shooters, you have 3 different aiming styles, that being tracking, flicking, and leading shots. And honestly, the best way to practice these is by heading into the practice range. The best way to practice tracking is simply you track your opponent. Have your opponent at any distance and have your crosshair tracked to the enemy player as they're moving for as long as you can. Always try to keep your crosshair directly in the center of the enemy player model, and of course, this will all get better with practice and time. Let me just be blatantly honest, my tracking is terrible. I've never aim trained in my life and I never will. And the reasoning behind it is honestly, I don't care that much. Now be my guest, you can sit in an aim trainer as long as you want and it doesn't matter to me. I don't really have the time to do it, nor do I really have the effort. I'm someone who just picks up a game and plays. It's honestly, I'm either good at the game or bad at the game, there's really no middle ground. So now, although aim trainers and practicing can work, I'll also say just playing the game will slowly improve your aim as well. Although you could debate and say that aim training, like aim labs and stuff, is better for all of this, which could also be true, but I'm just giving you my opinions on how to improve your aim. Whether you want to take this advice or not, it's completely up to you. But what about flick shotting all the shots that you seem really cool that seem impossible to hit, but honestly might be easier than you think? Hitting flicks is more based on reactions than anything. Now I will say, always flick shotting is probably not the best thing to do because you could probably mess up your arm. I'm no doctor, but it's a good way to practice and get a feel for your aim overall. Now the best way to practice this technique is to get two enemies in front of you, or objects, whatever you want to call them. Do your best to move your mouse quickly between both objects. Keep your crosshair in the center, flick to one side and then recenter, and then flick to the other side and then recenter. Repeat these actions and congrats, you're practicing flicking. Now the last technique is leading shots. Now this is really only the case for characters that have a projectile ability. A character like Hawkeye is a great example. He's a projectile based character that sometimes you need to lead your shots. I will say when it comes to leading your shots, most of the time it just comes from game awareness, how long you've been playing the game, anticipating where players are going to move and things like that. I will say there's no necessarily perfect way to practice this technique. It's mainly just about the amount of time you're putting into the game. The more time you put into the game, you start to understand the enemy movement a lot better. From there, you can easily start anticipating where players are going to move and how they're going to react to different situations so you can get a really easy kill. Mobility and jump shots, a super crucial pillar of Marvel Rivals. I would say that jump shotting or movement, whatever you want to call it, is a very crucial aspect of this game. As the more mobile you are, most of the time you're harder to hit. And if you're harder to hit and you have the ability to get a lot of damage out at the same time, why wouldn't you use this? You want to do your best to control your aim while you're jumping. Sometimes your aim can bounce around, so try to steady that. The best way to practice this is literally just jump around and just hold your primary fire. Try to get a feel of where the perfect center line is for where you're firing at. Now all this jumping and mobility is very beneficial to you, the player that's doing it, because most of the time all this jumping and moving around will skew and throw off your player hitbox, making it a lot harder for enemies to hit you. You can also dodge abilities and other things like that. Although most of these tips are pretty self-explanatory or rudimentary and you probably already know this, sometimes it's good to have a refresher and have all of this information relevant again to you, so here it is. But anyways, those were my tips to you to help improve your aim in Marvel Rivals. I didn't want to make the video too long because most of the topics are pretty self-explanatory. You don't need a 20-minute video to figure out how to aim in a game like this. But anyways, I hope you have a great day and I'll catch you in the next one.